guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about 5 tips for your career growth, right? And yes, we will be talking about negotiating salaries. Tip number 1, knowing when to pivot. After college, I worked in film for about 5, almost 6 years. Started as a PA, moved up to the production office. My goal at the time was to be a line producer, and I was a travel coordinator. I was doing really well, making really great money. Had a conversation with a line producer at the time, and she told me to look, while I was trying to figure out my career, look at people in jobs that I was interested in. So if I wanted to be a line producer, look at other line producers. What do their lives look like? What do they drive? How are their families kind of set up? And figure out if that's something that I want for myself. And at the time, I think she thought that this was helping me push forward to be excited about an upcoming career. But really what it did was showed me personally, like, everybody that I work with works 12, 14, 15-hour days. People in film, like, you're just working constantly, right? And it's a contract job, so you're never really sure when the next job is. So that month or two before, you start looking for the next job. So you're constantly on this weird grind. And in film, you're making really good money. So we're gonna call them golden handcuffs. There's a few careers that have these golden handcuffs. You're making so much money that it's hard to get out because you have to take such a huge financial cut in order to kind of do anything else that you end up Most of the line producers that I knew that were women, like, their relationships, a lot of them weren't married. And I'm not saying this is for everyone. These are just the line producers that I was looking at the time. They weren't married. Most line producers were men because, you know, their wives can take care of families. And if they were women, they didn't have babies. And, like, so it's all of these things, right? On top of that, I missed so many events or so many weddings that I went to that I had to work through because film is not a job where you can, like, turn it off. It's shooting and people have to get to where they need to be. And so that's what made me start to look at, is this really what I want to do? How can I pivot? So I say that to say, tip 1, knowing when to pivot is, like, once you realize that a job is not for you, I'm not saying quit your job. I would never tell you to do that. I don't think that's a smart idea, but you do need to start thinking about, what is it that I want to do next, and how do I start setting it up in a way that makes sense? Do I start saving a bunch of this money that I'm making for, we'll say, film right now, and putting it away? That way when I do make that career change and I know that I'm going to go from making, we'll use whole numbers, $100,000 to maybe $60,000 annually, that I have a buffer while I continue to kind of make that change. And then knowing that you just don't want to do it anymore. I know so many people still in film right now who want to change, but they don't write a resume and they don't start looking at other jobs and they don't start making those connections outside, especially when you're in a job that is so specific. It's very hard to find the time to figure out what are the things that I actually would want to do if I'm not doing this. And so it's really easy to get caught in the whirlwind of kind of just doing the same thing. So tip number 1, know when to pivot, know when it's not for you anymore. And we can do another video on, like, once you realize that you need to pivot, what are the things you need to do first in order to move forward? Let me know down in the comments below if you guys would like something like that. Tip number 2, effective job applications. Researching the companies you want to apply to while you're at your job. If there are things at your current company that you don't like, we should look for other companies that don't have those type of things. It doesn't really make any sense to be applying to jobs at companies that you don't align with for a number of reasons, right? Do you want to work at a huge company that's got 10,000 employees? Do you want to work at something small? Is there a reason for one thing or another? Do you know you've been in a position for the last 5 years where you haven't had a lot of opportunity for growth? And that's why you're looking. And so making sure when you're looking at these jobs, at these companies, that you feel good about why you're looking there and what you're looking there for. Keeping track of the applications that you're applying to and making sure that you're just not, like, hostily applying. I think there's a lot of information out right now about you telling people to just mass apply and then eventually something will work out. That's just not advice that I would ever give anybody. I think you need to be very specific about where you want to apply, what you want to apply to, and then let's focus all of our energy on those things. As you're applying, you actually know things about these companies that you can talk to them about, and it'll make you a better candidate for the roles, right? So step 2, effective job applications. Inside of this, your resume. I am not someone all this information comes from like someone who used to be a recruiter, right? So after film, I pivoted into recruiting, and that's a whole nother conversation. Again, I'm happy to make a video about recruiting, but that's not what this is about. Updating your resume. I'm not someone who will tell you you need to do 40 different resumes and make them super specific and keep rewriting them. And your resume is not the reason you're not getting jobs in like a holistic sense, right? Like, as long as you don't have a ton of grammatical errors, making sure your resume just reads for the jobs that you're interested in. If you want to go into admin, making sure that you have calendar management and time management and working with C-suite, those kind of things. As long as they're on your resume, it's written out well. Use ChatGPT. I call mine Dave. There's so many resources that are free where you can make sure that your resume is written in a way that makes, that it's just acceptable. Acceptable feels bad, right? Making sure your resume reads well, is clean, those are going to be the most important things. So that's like effective, and you can do this months before you start actually applying to make sure you're ready to go when the time comes. Moving on to tip number 3. Follow up after the interview. I talk to so many people. All of my friends always come to me asking for advice about like what do they need to do to make sure that they get these jobs. After an interview, after we've done all of the right stuff, right? We've finished an interview, regardless of how you think it went, send a thank you note, send a follow-up. So many people are not gonna do this, and it just adds that extra touch. Talk about things that you talked about during the interview. Why are you excited about this job? Why are you excited about the company? If Todd on the call told you that his kids are, they're going to the, whitewater rafting, like wish him good luck this weekend and remind them to stay cool, sunblock, whatever y'all talked about in the call, and remind them why they were excited to talk to you. Like anything during the interview that you can follow up with. You're looking forward to having that next conversation. You're looking forward to joining the team. I think people lose out on like such an easy thing that makes such a big impression. It also usually gets you a response about what next steps are, what you can look forward to, what the process is going to be. And you can ask all those kind of questions in a thank you follow-up as well. I'm saying all of these things, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? So just it can be short. Like, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to me. I really enjoyed getting to know the team. I'm excited about next steps. Please let me know if I can do anything, or if I can answer any questions that might not have fallen on deaf ears during the interview, right? So make sure you're writing that thank you. I always have mine like mocked up before, and then I just do like a little fill-in. I always like to CC everybody who's on the interview, and if you don't have their contact information, you can always send the letter to the recruiter and ask them to CC you when they send it over. That way you can get feedback on how they perceive it. Right? Tip number 4, networking for success. There are again, I keep saying this, there's just so many tips out here about networking and what it really means. To me, networking for success when you're looking for a job is very specific. So I'm someone who is all about using LinkedIn. I'm all about reaching out to people that you know, somebody that you think you know who knows somebody else. During a job search, you cannot be afraid to have these conversations with people, right? So if I decide that I want to work at, I don't know, let's use Chick-fil-A we're going to use Chick-fil-A because it's in the back of the video. Sponsor. It's sweet tea. I'm not even supposed to be drinking that, but that's beside the point. If I know I want to work at Chick-fil-A, corporate office, in the store, whatever. We're going to say corporate for this because you can probably just go into a restaurant, whatever. I'm going to find as many people at Chick-fil-A that I can figure out that I can find on LinkedIn. I'm going to reach out to all of them on LinkedIn. I'm going to send them all messages introducing myself, tell them what I'm interested in. Like, this is what I'm doing right now. I saw that you guys had this position open. Would love to talk to you when you have a time to talk about your experience at Chick-fil-A. Have that conversation. Always bridge it there, right? Are lots of people not going to answer? Yeah, that's true. but 1 or 2 will respond, and they'll tell you about their experience at Chick-fil-A. You'll figure out, is that the kind of situation I want to deal with, or is that similar to what I've been doing right now that I didn't really enjoy? And then you can keep going. You can ask them to pass your information on to HR. Is there anybody else you suggest on the team that I should talk to? Do you know anybody in the department that I'm interested in? I would love to just keep a relationship and just get to know Chick-fil-A on a closer basis. I think that that's an easier way to get your foot in the door and to find those relationships. To me personally, I try to respond to as many LinkedIn messages as I can, not only because of the recruiter in me, but just I think it's nice, and I know that people everywhere are just looking for jobs and they just want the information that you have, so why not share it? And I think there's more people who are open to doing that than you are giving credit to, and take advantage of things like that. While you're in that step 1, knowing when to pivot, have conversations with all of your friends who do different things. When I worked in film, what became really challenging for me is all of my friends were like, all the people I was around all the time worked in film, so it was hard having those conversations. But as soon as I knew I wanted to pivot and get out, I started networking with my friends. Like, what is it that you do? Where are you at? Why do you like it? Why don't you like it? What are the hours like? Do you get vacation time? How much vacation time? Like, really asking those kind of questions to try to create a scenario in my head where I'm like, okay, I think this might be really interesting. Let me go down that path, and figure out kind of what makes sense. I think so many times, me included, you get so caught up in networking, meaning adding more people inside of your circle instead of looking at your circle and figuring out, okay, maybe Brittany isn't what I want to do, but Brittany's brother does what I think I'm interested in, and I saw on LinkedIn that he's doing X, Y, and Z. Hey, Brittany, can you connect me with your brother so that we can have a conversation? Because I think I'm interested in going down that career path, and I really would like to talk to someone about what that really means. So you have the network. Don't muddy your waters thinking that you don't have. It's crazy, right? Anyway. So I think you have a bigger network than you think, and you need to use it. Now is the time to really lean in on what is around you and figure out how to make it work for you. And during this, I think it's super important to remind you that sometimes you do have to take a step back in order to take a step forward. And so making that plan too. If you're networking for success, like, can you intern with somebody that you know? And I don't mean intern in the fact of like applying, but like, I wanted to get into, the reason I'm on YouTube right now is because I really wanted to get into broadcast journalism when I graduated, but I was so afraid. And so a few years later, when I decided to kind of pivot back, which didn't work out, yeah, you know, we can get into the woes of not realizing your truth, right? But I knew someone who worked at a news station, and so I hit her up, and I hadn't talked to her in a while, and I was just letting her know, like, listen, this is what I'm interested in. And I drove to Chattanooga for a few days, and I interned, shadowed inside of the studio, and then I found a connection here and shadowed at CNN for a little bit and did those things to try to figure out, is this something I really want to do, before I made all of these big changes and went to school and did all of these things to figure out, like, is this something I would even want to do for the next 2 years to figure out, like, if I really like it. And so I think sometimes the networking for success is that, right? Those of us who are not in college, I think sometimes we get caught up in like, oh, it's too late for me to do that, but now's the time and you can do that, right? All right, the reason you're really here. Tip number 5, negotiating your salary. So we have done all of the things. We have decided that we're going to pivot. We've taken the time to create a real plan. We have effectively looked for jobs, looked for companies that make sense. We have followed up after the interview, sent our thank yous, and we have networked. We've used all of our network to make sure that when I do apply, the right people are going to see it. I'm going to get the interview, and now it's salary time, baby, right? This tip, salaries is truly a whole video in itself, but the tip I want to say that you guys need to remember, always negotiate your salary. But Claudia, what if they take the job away? Any company who doesn't allow you to negotiate is not a company I think that you should want to join. Let me explain. Not in like they offer you 65, you ask for 72, and they're like, this 65 is everything that we have. and you know, we've really pushed our budget in order to get you there. That is awesome. Now you know going in, this company really values me. Their HR has had the conversation and I have maxed myself out. What we don't want to do is like, I asked for 65, they offered me 65, I asked for 72 and they rescinded the offer. Odds are very high that that's a company that it's giving toxic vibes. From a recruiting standpoint, I've never been in a situation where we have rescinded an offer for someone who has asked for more money. We've been very upfront and like, this is all that we can do, but we've never pulled an offer away from someone because they asked for more money. And a lot of times you get into a job and because you haven't negotiated your salary, one, you find out that people on your team are making not double, but like 10 times more than you're making just because you didn't ask. And two, you start to resent it. Like, always ask for $10,000 more. Like, even if you don't feel comfortable, at least you can ask, at least they can say, hey, this is all we got. And then when you're locked in and you realize that most HR departments only do a 10% increase every year, that's if they do an increase at all. Most companies now are doing anywhere between like a 2% and a 3% increase. And so you start realizing like, oh, in order for me to make any more money, I either have to leave the company that I'm with, even though I really love it, in order to get that big increase, or I have to like beg HR. And then there's a bunch of additional approvals that come with any type of percentage that's over 10. It just turns into a cluster. You deserve it. You can do it. You do not be afraid to ask for your money. Like, you know what you're worth reasonably, right? And you should feel really good. When you're having these networking conversations, ask the people who work there, like, this is the salary range I'm kind of thinking. And again, I'm just using like easy numbers, right? So go forth and conquer at the 400,000s, right? But let's say you know that you make $60,000 right now. You know you want to make $70,000 on the next job. When you're networking, ask people like, what is the range? You know, I'm looking for anywhere between $70,000 and $80,000. Like, what do you think that's gonna be like? And if they're like, yeah, that's definitely plausible, then when you're having these interviews and having these conversations with people, ask for the money that you want. One, up front, be honest. Don't downplay yourself and say, oh yeah, I would definitely take 50 if you know that you want 70. Having the conversation with people, always be honest. Be honest with your recruiter and be honest with yourself. Because the last thing you want to do is take on a job with money that you don't feel confident about. It won't make you want to do your best work. And then 5 months from now, we'll be having this same conversation about these tips, about pivoting and looking for other career opportunities based on money, when you could have just asked for your money up front. Which is what I always go with, right? Like, always ask for your money up front. You will never be disappointed knowing that you asked for everything that you could have gotten. So let's go back through the tips. And I have them written down so that I don't botch them. Tip 1, knowing when to pivot. It's okay that the job that you went to college for and thought you wanted to do your whole life is just not working out. But let's make sure we make a plan, figure out what makes sense, and pivot the way that we're supposed to. Effectively applying to jobs. Researching those companies, updating that resume, making sure we don't have any grammatical errors so that we're ready and prepared to go. Following up after the interview. The easiest thing that you could possibly do, right? Like, just do that. Networking for success. Remember, starting with that inner circle, going into LinkedIn, reaching out to everybody on the team. Those are the things that make the difference in looking for jobs. 80,000 people apply to jobs online every single day. So like, separate yourself. Number 5, always negotiate your salary. Know what we want to start with, know what our goal is, and then ask for the money that you want, and don't be afraid. Say it with your chest, like this, right? These strategies, I think, these tips are going to help you get a job. Like, it just is what it is. I am someone, I tell y'all all the time, my friends always joke about, like, if anybody can get a job, Claudia can get a job. I'm always myself. I'm always honest up front. And I know when it's time to pivot, I start to make very specific goals on like, this is exactly what I'm looking for in my next job. Does it work out? Not necessarily. That's why I'm so good at pivoting. But I have continued to increase and get better at knowing like what I want in a job and what I'm looking for. And I think that's all you can really ask for, right? Please like, comment, subscribe. If you liked this content, I'm so happy to do more career advice, more negotiation tips, more things on networking. Happy to do any of those things. There's 2 other videos down below. Please watch them if you haven't. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers in, I think we said 90 days. It's giving crazy, but that's where we are right now. So nice having you guys here. Happy that you're showing up and that I'm showing up, and we're gonna keep growing this thing. Let me know what you need. I'm here for you. Bye, friends.